Howdy YouTube pards, Jack Spade back here, High Noon Leatherworks, and today we're going to continue the series on the Uncle Henry knife sheath, and we're going to drill all of the stitching holes because we have 3 thicknesses of leather instead of 2 like normal. So we put a spacer in here, and that allows the knife blade to move in and out of the sheath easier. So come on in, I'll bring you in closer and we'll get started on this. Alright, so what I'm using today is a small tabletop drill press, not precision by any means of the name, but it does do a great job on leather, and it was very inexpensive. I picked it up at Harbor Freight for, I think it was on sale for $49.99, and then I got to use a coupon that I had. So it was very inexpensive, and it does a great job on leather. And I also picked up these 3 30-second drill bits, and they are high-speed steel drill bits. Very inexpensive. I think these were like $2 for a pack of 7, so not very expensive at all. These will last forever drilling through leather. So what I'm going to do is, we talked about in the past videos in this series that I've already marked all my holes, and I'm not sure if I showed this, but I already marked all my holes with my stitching punch. Now, I didn't try to punch through any of the leather, I just put it on there and tapped on it, and these are just marks so they don't go through. And what that does is that makes my spacing for my holes perfect. As you can see all the way around there, those marks, very uniform. And what I'll do is today put this in the drill press, and we'll go around that and drill every one of those holes, and that'll make it much easier to stitch through 3 thicknesses of leather instead of punching it. And first of all, punching it would be almost impossible to go through 3 thicknesses of leather, but it would also make it almost impossible to get needles through there. So drilling those holes out just makes it much easier and much cleaner to get that needle through that hole. And what I've done is I just taken an old scrap piece of 1x4, just cheap pine that I had laying around, and you can see I've definitely used it quite a bit. And what I do is I use this as a backer, so I put my piece of leather on top of that, and then as I drill down through it, that bottom of that drill bit will touch that wood. It'll go through the leather, touch the wood, and that'll make my hole clean all the way through. So if I don't have a decent hard backer, then it may want to kind of spin that leather on the bottom here as that drill bit goes through. So let me drill a couple holes and I'll show you what it looks like. And you have to be super careful when you're drilling those holes to make sure that it is going in the marks that you placed on there. If not, then your stitches aren't going to be exactly apart, and it could cause some aesthetic issues with the way it looks. But you can see those 3 holes that I drilled, you can actually see light through them. See that? You can see that cabinet back there behind me through those holes. So we got a nice clean hole for our stitch to go through. Plenty of leather there to bite. I noticed that I need to tap on a couple of my holes here that don't show up great. And again, I'm not trying to go through that leather or anything. I'm just trying to make a mark on there so I know where to drill. So I'm just lightly tapping on there. The rest of them look good. So I'll go ahead and drill this all the way around, and then I'll be back to show you the finished product. holes drilled for my stitching. You can see they're nice, straight. You can see light all the way through them. Spaced out perfectly apart. So I'm ready to start my stitching on that part. I do have to get my holes drilled if I'm going to stitch this for my loop, for my belt. I got to get my holes back here so I can get that stitched. And I could use rivets there. I could put a couple of rivets in that bottom part. That'd be fine. That would hold it. But I'm a little concerned about the side of the blade, as it, like right here, the face of the blade as it goes in and out of the sheath. Those rivets possibly scratching that. So I think I am going to sew that instead of putting rivets in there. You could do it both ways, but this will just be safer. I am going to take a look, and I'll grab a needle real quick. And these are the standard size needles that I use. There's tons of different sizes of needles, but this is the size that I use. And I don't know the number right off the top of my head, but as you can see, that slides through there very easily. Just glides right through those holes that I just drilled in there. Now, once I'll do a saddle stitch on this, so a needle will have to go through both directions. So once I get my thread in there and come through the second time, it's still going to be just barely snug, but that'll cut down on the time that it takes to sew this together and the effort. It'll really cut down on the effort of having to really take a lot of physical ability, effort, power to pull those needles through those holes, especially with it being 3 thicknesses. So I'm pretty sure I've showed it before, but I'll show you what I'm talking about. We've got a spacer in there between the front and the back, so it's sandwiched right here. Now it's only 3/16 to 1/4 inch wide, and I don't know if you could see that or not, but you should be able to possibly see that spacer in there. And again, what that's for is to hold the front and the back apart, so that when we're sliding that knife in there, it slides in there very easily. And the blade itself rests against that spacer and not your threads, so it won't cut your threads. So next thing I'm going to do is, let's move the camera. And I'm going to mark where my holes need to be when I fold this over. Where am I going to sew this part? And I like to sew it normally right here across this part, and be folded over like that, and that's what's going to make your belt loop. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and measure this, and because I want it straight across from the top where the handguard sits. So it looks like, get a tool, a little scribe that I can mark it with, and let me get a little ruler, and let's go if I take that down like that, Looks like probably a 1/2 inch up would be about right. Now I want to make sure if I bring that back all the way to where the handguard is, where they match up, I want to make sure that I still have room at the top where my handle goes. I want to make sure I still have room to put my hold down strap, which I do. I have plenty of room, so that's perfect. So that's what I'll go by. I'll actually bring this down and we'll go a 1/2 inch above the handguard or the front. So I'll just go a 1/2 inch up and place a little mark. 1/2 inch up, another little mark, and then what I'll do is, since that'll all be covered up with thread, I'll just scribe me a little line between those two marks. And what that'll do is put an indentation in the leather so I know where to punch my holes for my guide, and this will fold over like that. So then I'll take my punch. I'm going to put this piece of wood that I've been drilling into, I'm going to place it. Let me move the camera one more time. I'm going to place that piece of wood down on my workbench, and then that's what I'll mark that with. Since it's straight across, I can use the one that has the most. This one has 6 points on it. And I'll fold this back over, take a look, kind of give me an idea whether I need to move it to the right or the left. Looks like I could go probably 2 more holes over to the outside of the holster, and the holes on the left look like they're about perfect. So again, I'm going to drill this, so I'm just going to mark it. I don't want to go all the way through. It's not going to hurt anything if I go all the way through, but I do want to drill it, so it'll make for a lot cleaner holes, and again, cleaner stitching. Now, again, drilling, I've told you at the beginning, I got 3/32 inch drill bits. I also bought 1/16. So, depending on the size of your needle, will depend on the size of the drill bit you want to use. You don't want it way too big, because then it looks sloppy. It looks like you have a huge hole around your thread. So what we'll do is we're going to fold this over, make the back match the top of the front, and again we're going to want make that as straight as possible, and then we really need to hold that together somehow so that it doesn't slide while we're drilling all the way through. So I'll use a couple of these plastic clamps. Again, they're fairly inexpensive, so They're not gonna make an impression on your leather or anything. If you feel like you want to use a little bit better clamp, you could always put a scrap piece of leather on top or in between your clamps so it doesn't scar your leather if you're concerned about that. Now another thing that I'm going to have to deal with is when I'm doing this is to get to my drill bit on my drill press with these in the way. So it may be such a thing that I want to try to turn them and put them in a different direction and see if that helps, because that other direction they were definitely in the way. Those clamps out of my way, so the clamps are way on the back, and that gives me enough flexibility that I can drill through both pieces of leather. And as I move my piece, I'll try not to move the clamps or my leather sheath. I'll actually move the piece of wood, and that'll keep me from moving these two or them getting moved. So let me drill this and then I'll show you the results. And get all the pieces out of there that fell down in the sheath. And there's my holes drilled on the front, and that will hold my belt loop. Alright, so that concludes doing our drilling of our stitching holes. Something we haven't done before. So now the next episode we'll be ready to do our stitching, and we'll see just how convenient that's going to be with these holes drilled in here. So come on back to the next episode and check it out, and we'll be doing our stitching on the knife sheath. So again, like I always say, please like, share, and subscribe.